Andre Agassi won 8 Grand Slam titles, spent 100 weeks as world number 1, claimed an Olympic gold medal and was part of 3 victorious Davis Cup teams. In later life, he coached Novak Djokovic and Grigor Dimitrov, became one of tennis's most generous philanthropists, and kept gossip columnists entertained with some high-profile relationships. However, the image that many casual fans of the game have of Agassi comes from his early years, before the major titles. The eye-catching hair, the bold clothing, and the brash playing style that entertained, even if it did not initially fill up the trophy cabinet. But there were deeper, hidden, and complex contradictions to this rebel with a cause. Andre Kurt Agassi was born in Las Vegas in April 1970 to mum Betty and dad Mike, a former boxer who represented Iran at 2 Olympic Games. The young Andre's future career path was forged from a very early age. He had a racket thrust in his hand as a toddler by his father, who drilled him for hours at the family home. "My dad started me when I was 2, as soon as I could walk," Agassi later recalled. By the age of 6, he was being featured on television as a child prodigy, striking balls for the cameras. Sat nervously on his smiling father's knee, the young Agassi experienced his first interview. In monosyllabic answers betraying his age, he was asked how he liked the game.
How do you like the game of tennis?
Fine.
But it had become an obsession. "When I was 6 years old, I would sit in front of my TV set and watch every single point that was televised. I used to pretend I was whoever I was watching. I must have won Wimbledon about 1,000,000 times before the age of 10, the adult Agassi said. But while the barrage of balls fired out of customised machines helped mould a real-life Wimbledon champion, the stifling culture he grew up in took its toll on his spirit. In his 2009 autobiography, Open, Agassi said, "I play tennis for a living, even though I hate tennis. Hate it with a dark and secret passion, and always have." At the age of 13, he first displayed the rebellious streak that would become his trademark by piercing his ears. It was, he claimed, a last resort protest at being sent to Nick Bollettieri's tennis academy in Florida, which Agassi described as a glorified prison camp. The desire to be more of an individual became a thread through Agassi's early years as a professional. He raised eyebrows with his hair, a striking two-tone mullet, popular with pop stars and soccer players of the era, but less common in the world of tennis, and turned heads with his garish clothing. Gene Scott, founder of Tennis Week magazine, told a 2004 episode of the long-running documentary series Biography, which profiled Agassi's life, "In New York, he would have been a prototypical 'this is how not to dress.' The shoes were awful, the socks didn't match, the shorts were long and baggy, and the shirt was always something weird. He was considered a crazy man to the official governing fathers of the game." This was particularly true at the 1990 French Open, with his hot lava-themed outfit and denim shorts. It would barely register these days, but caused such a fuss at the time that the Roland Garros authorities discussed adopting more strict clothing guidelines. "I liked it because it pissed a lot of people off," Agassi said in 2016. That seemed, on the face of it, to be the young Agassi's raison d'etre, to show everyone, including the suits who ran the game, that he was doing things his way. In fact, he refused to appear at Wimbledon in 1988, 1989 and 1990, in large part because of its insistence on all-white clothing. "Whether it was the long hair or whether it was the clothes, I felt like communicating that I wasn't going to live on anybody else's terms, I'm going to live on my own," Agassi would later reflect. It's a telling comment, suggesting that the relentless nature of his dad's tutelage, which he called crowding in his book, and the frustrating loneliness at the Bollettieri Academy had made him want to strike out on his own. But was he really an heir to the super brat throne vacated by John McEnroe, whose career was fading out as Agassi's got going? Well, he could certainly have on-court meltdowns, most notably in a US Open second-round match against Petr Korda in 1990, when he swore at an umpire and later appeared to spit in his direction, for which he avoided a default but was later fined $3,000. The whole thing wouldn't have happened if the umpire had been doing his job, an unrepentant Agassi said after his next match. But contradictions run right through the early Agassi story. While sometimes playing up to his rock star image on court, off it he was very softly spoken, thoughtful and analytical, despite regretting leaving education so early to pursue tennis. And while he once joked on court during a match that winning does you no good unless you look good too, there are contradictions about that as well. His notorious denim shorts were less a personal style choice, more a commercial hand-me-down. They were made by Nike for McEnroe to wear, but he refused, and so Agassi was given them instead. And the famous mullet? It was replaced by a hairpiece for the first half of the 1990s, as he refused to adjust to early baldness. But it was perhaps his relationship with authority that held the biggest contradiction. He set out to provoke the establishment, but also craved its approval, albeit on his own terms. When he couldn't achieve that, and he was never going to change Wimbledon's long-standing traditions, he learned to give ground. He grew up. Whether it was his notable lack of a Grand Slam title in his early years, he reached 2 French Open finals and the US Open final without winning going into 1992, he realised his self-imposed exile from the All England club was futile. He returned in 1991, making the quarters, before winning in 92 and ending his slam drought. Wimbledon is a place where I learnt to wear white, where I learnt to bow, Agassi told CNN. It's a place where I learnt to accept and to come to appreciate tradition. Agassi also learned to accept his hair loss, ditching the wig in the mid-1990s and embracing another trademark look. He later learned as well to come to terms with his own curtailed education and provided thousands of others with the opportunities he never had, using his own foundation to open a school in Las Vegas for at-risk children. But the biggest sign that he doesn't want history to repeat itself? There is no tennis court or ball machine at the home he shares with his wife and Steffi Graf. A lesson learned. But did he ever learn to like tennis? There's a deep appreciation for the sport, he said in 2017. That's the best way to put it.